A very good evening and a warm welcome. At Hyde Park tonight, we will talk about awareness among the people and how people should be made aware on the Constitution, decision-making process, and how you exercise your franchise and also be an active participant in the Republic of Sri Lanka. We've invited to our studios a social entrepreneur and the author of the book, Jana Rajaya. Good evening, Eranda Ginige.
Good evening, Indeewari. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Hyde Park. And I think your book, which is a simple guide to the Constitution of the Republic of Sri Lanka. Before I speak about your guide to the Constitution and how you try to simplify terms to the people, let's start off with what you think at present. What's your political inclination? What are you trying to tell the people?
That's a good place to start, because a lot of people, when like to put citizens, including me, into baskets. You say, he's that party's henchman, or that political leader's henchman, and so on. I think it's inevitable. People are free to say whatever they like. But my response to that is that I have a political view. I have a political ideology, in terms of the economy, in terms of how the policies, in terms of foreign policy. So I have, a political view of my own, which I have developed and gathered through critical analysis of various political ideologies that exist. And so therefore I take a stand in that political spectrum, from the left-right spectrum or quadrants or whatever, however you analyze it. So therefore I fall into the left-leaning camp, which is currently led by Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna party with a number of other affiliate parties. So because they also have the same political ideology and leading that, I invariably fall into that camp. So that's where I am currently. But
if we talk about the current scenario, there's a lot of controversy and discussion, debate about presidential candidate. But elections per se, we have seen a massive delay in provincial council elections to, of course, presidential elections have to be held, but the delay in provincial council polls, that is a big question here for the people of the country. But according to you, do you think the people really care about the delay in elections?
Oh, absolutely. They do care, and they must care, because elections and the franchise, the decision-making right of the people, that's what essentially it is, right? It's not an event where we go and just cast our vote, where we put a cross against the symbol of the party or an individual's name. That's not what it is. That's essentially how the citizens of the Republic make decisions. So franchise, which was won through sweat and blood, and that has to be upheld at all times. And it is really sad and quite disappointing that this current government has failed to conduct elections on time, especially provincial council elections. But let me on that subject say this as well. This current government, through the 19th Amendment, took away the people's right to elect parliamentarians, people's representatives for the parliament for 4.5 years. That's what essentially happened. The Supreme Court decision that was given after the October Revolution, as I call it, confirmed that people do not have the right for 4.5 years from the starting point of a parliament to change that parliament when the people want. And I think that's a violation of the people's franchise.
People did vote for this government.
Yes.
People brought the government into power.
Yes.
And the October Revolution, as you call it, was a change that was done within Parliament, within some may call it a constitutional crisis.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy theory there,
Yeah.
yes. But do you think people really care about the delay in elections? Have you all been able to create that awareness about the delay in elections? Because now everyone's focused about a presidential election. Yes, that has to happen, but why aren't we talking about the ground level? Because that has to be rectified first.
I mean, at the end of the day, we have to do everything through the democratic process, right? So when that decision came, we had to bow down to that decision and sort of, accept that. But we don't agree with that decision. And we have been fighting and we have been talking about the importance of having provincial council elections. But at least now we have hope in Indeewari. We know for certain that the presidential election must take place before the end of this year. And we expect that to happen accordingly. If that does not happen, that will mean a terrible breakdown of the democratic process. So at least we now know that this election is happening, and we are all looking forward to it, and we are all preparing for that election.
But you don't want the provincial council elections to be the delayed ones to be held prior to presidential elections?
Well, I mean, so what will happen is that provincial council elections will be kind of used in this power play. That's not how it should be done, right? Because here we are at the cusp of presidential elections, and then all of a sudden, if you bring in another election right before that, that's going to create a lot of confusion and unnecessary. Emotional and otherwise conflicts among the people. So, because provincial councils, as I explained in the book, has problems on its own with the 13th Amendment and how provincial councils are viewed and so on. So, I think, personally, I think the right thing to do, I mean, come on, they've delayed these provincial councils, some councils for years now, right? So we might as well, have the presidential election first as planned, and then the new president can hold provincial council elections.
You talk about creating awareness in your book among people about the Constitution. If I may look at it, this is the singular version. You'll be translating the book into Tamil too.
Yes.
Right. You talk about that the continuation of this Republic of Sri Lanka relies on the people's awareness, their knowledge on the Constitution. But governments after governments have failed to give the people their real power, their real right to know. How are we going to change this?
So, my answer to that is yes, there is a fault with the governments and the politicians, and partly it is done deliberately. But I think the onus and the responsibility is with the people, right? We have to stop saying that the people are all informed and all wise, and people know everything. It's not the case. We have to accept. I mean, even if you ask from somebody who has actually studied a little bit of political science in A-levels, at school or at universities, you realize that the understanding of the republic and democracy and how the democracy is structured in the Republic of Sri Lanka, there's a huge lack of understanding among the people. So if the educated people don't have that thorough, broad understanding, how can we expect the average citizen who may not have had that much of education to have that understanding? People think they understand, people think they know, but they don't have that awareness. So I realized this. I'll tell you how I realized this. Now, after I started introducing social entrepreneurship as the future of business, there's no question that is going to be the future of business of the world, right? So that's why I'm championing social entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka. And then I was looking in Indeewari, what is the future of politics in the world, right? Because, world is evolving. And that's when I discovered liquid democracy, right? Liquid democracy is kind of going back to direct democracy, where the people themselves start making decisions rather than necessarily having representatives in between. Now, what was holding us to do that is we didn't have a mechanism to do it. But with the advancement of technologies like blockchain, which was the back-end support system that powers cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, for example, people are now using that blockchain technology, which is incorruptible and distributed ledger system, to hack governance. So there are platforms, governance mechanisms, which are now being built on the technology of blockchain. Okay. So I discovered this, and it was really exciting. There's no question that is the future of governance. And there's an organization called Democracy Earth, a collective of young people from around the world. It started from the South Americas and now operating from the US. And I'm an ambassador for them, for Sri Lanka. It's a voluntary position. So what happened was I started talking about liquid democracy, right? Writing about it and having events and workshops. And then I realized, my God, before start talking about liquid democracy, we have to talk about democracy. Mm-hmm. Because the understanding of demos kratos, rule of the people, by the people, for the people, some of the basics are lacking, right? If you ask an average citizen, what do you understand by republic? What is Janarajya? What is Kudiyarasu? You will not get a complete answer, right? If you ask what is, I'll give you an example. Democracy, the Sinhala word to democracy is Prajatantraya. Mm-hmm. It's not Prajatantravadaya, right? Prajatantravadaya is democratism. It is the idea of democracy, the concept of democracy, and the various debate on the topic. So we use these words so interchangeably and without meaning, right? We don't understand the real attributes of this. So then I started talking about democracy, and then the October Revolution happened, mm-hmm. and then people said, okay, Eranda, that's great. I mean, what I did was, Derana was amazing. They gave me plenty of opportunity to come on your shows and talk about the issue. And then in every show, what I did was I held up the Constitution and said, guys, this is 400 rupees. Please buy this Constitution. This Constitution is the social contract between us, i.e. the people, not between people and the supposed rulers, right? There are no rulers in a democracy. So you have to read this. If you are casting your vote without reading your Constitution, it is as ridiculous as signing a very important legal document without actually reading it.
Is our education system at fault? You were an educator, a teacher, that's how you start your career. Yeah. And of course you continue to create awareness through education, educating people about. But is it really our education system that's amiss? Because for people to be so ignorant about their rights vested through the Constitution, yeah, and their rights as human beings, as human, yeah, what's really missing in Sri Lanka? Absolutely.
Right. I mean, I'm a product of state education, although I had my higher education abroad. When a citizen arrives at the age of 18 is when that you become a full citizen, where you practice your franchise.
And right? Everyone gets excited about voting.
And everyone gets excited. But you have to ask this question honestly, are they really prepared to make that decision? Because that's an important decision. In a democracy, people rule, people make decisions. Now to make those decisions, one must have a thorough understanding of the Constitution and the democratic process. Mm-hmm. But the school does not prepare you. Now the thing, Indeewari, I'm not talking about you having a subject on the various constitutional changes, the Donamo reforms and the Manning reforms and a little bit of history and a little bit of rights and freedoms and all of that. Then you study it like a subject. It is not practical. Schools, first of all, the principals and the teachers need to understand their Constitution, right? And then they need to have a real dialogue. They need to have embedded teaching with the students from a young age to prepare them to be decision-making citizens who are capable of making decisions in the Republic. Because if you do not have such citizens, if you don't have people who can make informed, conscious decisions, then how can you expect democracy?
On that note, we'll take a short commercial break. We'll be back at Hyde Park to stay with us. Welcome back. At Hyde Park, we're having a chat with Eranda Ginige, a social entrepreneur and author, to talk about how people can be made aware of their rights and the Constitution. You were talking about the importance of being aware of education, but let me just talk a little about certain debates and controversies that arose after the horrific attacks on Easter Sunday, which exposed failures and imbalances in our system. If I directly straight away go to talk about the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, now this shows that a certain community is subject to a certain set of laws and regulations. So how does this differ from our constitution of the Jana Raja of the Republic of Sri Lanka? How do you look at that?
Well, I think that's a problem, right? That's something that needs to be addressed. So the republic becomes a republic because all citizens, Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim, Malay, Burgher, Chetty, Badi, all citizens have equal sovereignty, right? i.e. ownership, equal freedoms, equal rights, and equal franchise, right? So when the ownership is with the people, you call it the republic, and all citizens, irrespective of your national identity or your religion or your gender identity, they all have equal sovereignty, equal freedoms, equal rights, and equal franchise. This is something really important that we must understand. A lot of the time, the Sinhala people think that they have some kind of special privileges, and the Tamil people think that Sinhala people have special privileges. It's a really, really bad misunderstanding, right? But having said that, there are some issues when it comes to Thesavalame law and the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act and the Kandyan law when it comes to the land. So these are probably the three areas that there is some kind of discrimination from the law. And I think if we have an honest conversation among the different national identities and the relevant communities, I think we can solve this, right? But we need to have that honest conversation. I don't think it should be done on the back of Easter Sunday attacks. And I don't want to call it Easter Sunday because it kind of Easter is such a holy thing for the Catholics and the Christians. So I don't want to sort of muddy it with the word attack. I try to refrain from calling it Easter Sunday attack. So April 21st attack, right? It was a terrorist attack. It was an Islamist terrorist attack. It's not an Islamic terrorist attack. It's an Islamist terrorist attack. But I don't think it should be used as the backdrop to have this conversation because emotions are high. We should not make decisions when emotions are high. We should make rational decisions. That's why I constantly say, to have a rational conversation, we first need to understand what we're talking about, right? I'll give you another example. So we say that every citizen has equal sovereignty, equal freedoms, equal rights, and equal franchise. But then we have this word called Mahajatiya and Sulu Jatin, right? Majority, nationality, and in minorities, there's this concept, right? Now my argument is, yes, there's Sinhala national identity, there are people like that, there's Tamil national identity, there's a Muslim national identity, and so on. But if the premise of the republic is that all citizens have equal sovereignty, equal freedoms, equal rights, and equal franchise, then how can there be political majority? So then one can argue that, okay, but then there's a numerical majority of Sinhala people. So the Sinhala people can elect more Sinhala people to the parliament where the decisions are made, and then they can pass laws which are favorable to Sinhala people. That's the popular argument. This is the concern that started in 1920s, which eventually led to the war, right? But it was not a republic. Now we are a republic, right? So in the republic, the major premise is that all citizens have equal sovereignty, equal freedoms, equal rights, and equal franchise. This is like a mantra. You need to constantly remind people of this. And if that is the case, then if even the Sinhala people or the parliamentarians create a law that gives special privileges to Sinhala people, that violates the major premise. There is no such law. There cannot be such law, right? So this is what I say, people need to understand the principles of republic and how republic is structured within our constitution. If they understand this, then this whole fear and suspicion will stop.
But we're also talking about the emotions of the people, the minority, the majority. The minority is worried about being oppressed, while the majority is feeling threatened here, right? But how do we gap this? How do we bring that Sri Lankan identity? This is something we've been talking a lot at HydePark, to create, not create, but to promote a Sri Lankan identity. But why are our politicians not looking at this in a favorable way? Is it because there is a lot of gain through this kind of imbalance? Sure.
That's what divide and conquer, divide and rule. So as long as communities are divided, you can play the discrimination card, and you can sort of build on that communal and ethnic politics. But I don't want to talk too much about politicians because we know that they do this, right? And they don't want people to have this understanding. Every revolution in Indeewari starts with education, right? If the people truly understand the meaning of the republic and democracy and people's rights and freedoms and franchise, and that we have all equal. By the way, when we say we are equal, we have a little bit of a misunderstanding. We are not the same. Indeewari, you're a female, I'm a male, right? Your education is different, my education is different. Your aspirations are different, right? Your sense of fashion is different, my sense of fashion is different. We are very different individuals, right? We're not the same, but we are equal. There's a difference there. And that's a major difference that people need to understand, right? You can still be different, but be equal. The problem is, in Sinhala language, we use the same word for same and equal, samana, right? So these are sometimes these words, because we converse in words and people make meaning through these words. Sometimes these words need to be used properly and responsibly. Now, to answer your question, yes, there's a lot of emotion, and I think decisions should not be made on emotions. Decisions should be made on rationality, right? On logic, on facts and figures. And you mentioned about the Sri Lankan identity. Now, this is where I think we went wrong in Indeewari. We were made a republic in 1972, May 22nd, right? That is when we actually became free, right? But soon after that, we started coming up with this Sri Lankan national identity, right? See, you can't create a nationality like that, right? Because it's a very artificial thing. If I ask you, is there a Sri Lankan language? No. Is there a Sri Lankan dress? No. Is there a Sri Lankan cuisine? Is there food? No. Do we have Sri Lankan traditions and customs? No. But we do have Sinhala language, Sinhala dress, Sinhala food, Sinhala customs, Sinhala festivals. We do have Tamil language, Tamil dress, Tamil culture, that, and so with Muslims, right? Those identities, those national identities, and nationality is not innate, it's based on your birth, right? So it's a social classification based on birth. So these by birth national identities are different, right? And then we say, oh, maybe we don't want all of this, let's make one nationality. But how do you do that? It's not practical. So this is where I say, Sri Lankan is just citizenship. It's just a citizenship of the republic, right? Within this citizenship of republic, you have Sinhala nationality, Tamil nationality, Muslim nationality, and the constitution gives the full freedom, equal freedom to all communities to practice and celebrate these diverse communal identities. Why don't we have equality in diversity? Rather than trying to create this artificial identity, let's celebrate all these different nationalities.
But doesn't Sri Lanka's, in Sri Lanka's case, the fact that we have diverse communities, different languages and cultures make that Sri Lankan identity a stronger one for the nation as Sri Lankans? But because we've forgotten that at somewhere, especially even with schools. different schools for different communities,
Yeah.
and that's where the upbringing starts.
Yeah.
To think about yourself as marginalized to a certain community, but if you don't think as Sri Lankan, and if the constitution doesn't bring us together as Sri Lankan, that's where we may go wrong.
Well, I think having schools where different students from different national identities and communities can study can happen irrespective of whether we create a Sri Lankan nationality or diverse nationalities, right? I mean, we can still have schools with different nationalities. They're not connected. There's no correlation, right? The Constitution states that there is freedom to every nationality equally to celebrate, practice, and uphold their identities, whether it is religion or cultural and national. And I think when we try to push this artificial Sri Lankan nationality, we create suspicion in all communities. What happens is the Sinhala people think that, okay, Sri Lankan nationality is Sinhala nationality, right? And the Tamil people say, hold on for a second, how much of Tamil is in that Sri Lankan nationality? Where do we really fit in? What is the language that we speak in that national identity? And the Muslims also have that sense of misunderstanding. So I think it is impractical, right? Because nationalities in Indeewari are built over millennia, right? You can't just create a nationality. I'll give you another reason. The reason why we call Sri Lankan is because the name of this state became Sri Lankan in 1972. Before that it was called Ceylon, right? Before that it was called something else. What if we we decide to call this land some other name in another 50 years? Are we going to change our nationality to that name? It's impractical. It's unrealistic. This is where this Western concept of nation state went wrong in this part of the world. Sri Lanka and places like India are never nation states. If you take Germany, for example, Germany, yes, it's a nation state because a vast majority of German-speaking, German history, German culture people got together and formed Germany, right? So in that context, it is correct to say that there are minorities. But in Sri Lanka, Indeewari, now I want you to really understand this and pay attention here. In Sri Lanka, when we were made a republic, we did not make this republic a Sinhala republic. Because the majority of the Sinhala people, we did not make it a Sinhala republic. We made it a republic for all citizens. So my question is, if the Tamils and the Muslims have equal sovereignty, freedoms, rights, and franchise as the Sinhala, where is the foundation for minority in Sri Lanka? There cannot be a minority in Sri Lanka. There's a numerical, obviously, at any point, you are never going to have a society where there will be X number of Sinhala people equal X number of Tamil people equal X number of Muslim people. Obviously, there will be different numerical figures based on population statistics. But that does not make it a political majority or a political minority. So that this idea, this Western concept of nation state and therefore minority rights and minorities does not apply to the Sri Lankan context.
Right. Before we talk more on that, I'd like to go back to your book here, Sthavara Saha Asthavara Raja. You're talking about a stable government and the difference between a government that faces instability. How do we ensure the benefits of a stable government through the laws that we are subject to going forward?
Well, I think when we say a stable government, that does not mean that one political party or a group, a coalition or whatever, has 2/3 or more seats in the parliament, right? Because I think that's very bad for democracy. Because if one party has 2/3 majority in the parliament, then they can pass laws as they like. And because they themselves appoint the cabinet, which is actually not the case, which doesn't have to be as per the constitution, they can pass laws and they can execute those laws as they wish by one party and one group. And this is what we have been we've seen happening throughout, right? Instead, what the people need to understand is that what is the purpose of the parliament? why do we have a legislature? The role of the legislature is to pass laws, right? So they're just representing us. There's a MP for every 80,000 citizens in the republic, right? So you get elected. You're not selected. You get elected, and then you need to find the issues, then the problems of the people of that electorate, bring them to the parliament, discuss, also find solutions to them, propose them, debate, and we should debate not to sling mud and just win the argument. We debate to find the best solution for that issue, right? So we come up with that solution, we develop that solution, and then finally we approve that solution through a vote, right? That's the basic democratic process. It's not rocket science, right? And then you have a separate executive presidency, cabinet of ministers, and the public service. All these three things are part of the executive. Executive means act of execution, right? Executive does not mean this all-powerful, God-like, almighty position, right? It's a blatant misrepresentation of the Constitution. So you just have the legislature, which makes laws. They cannot execute laws. You have the executive that execute these laws. They cannot pass laws, right? This is the separation. So if people understand this, the role of the legislature and the role of the executive, they need to elect suitable people who can make laws.
I'd like to talk more on this, on the suitable people, but we'll have to go in for a short commercial break. We'll be right back at Hyde Park. Welcome back at Hyde Park. We're talking to Eranda Ginige. You were just telling us about suitable people being elected to power. You've also said that Sri Lanka's two major political parties are held by political families and elites and their close friends, leading to collusion, nepotism, and ultimately financial corruption. This is the basic opinion that every Sri Lankan holds at present. Where do we go from here when we elect suitable people to power?
So this is the golden question, right? People, usually after some kind of a political discussion, people ask me, so Eranda, who should we elect? That should not be the question, because election act of election is a personal thing. That's why it is done in secrecy, right? And you should make that decision based on your own political ideology and an in-depth understanding of the current needs and the future needs of the republic, right? Now, unfortunately, people think that election and suffrage and franchise and voting is all about getting somebody to power. Even you use the word, electing somebody to power, right? So we think that we select some people as our rulers, right? Palakeo, right? We elect them, and then they...
Instead of naming them as the ones who have to serve us.
People's representatives. That's the right word. Janata Niyojityo, right? I think we need to stop using this word palakya, right? And even the word rule in Indeewari does not mean control, right? The word rule is decision making and execution. That's what it means. Politics is affairs of the state, right? But anyway, coming back to this, first of all, you need before you cast your vote or even think about it, you have to read your constitution. And if you can't read the constitution, at least read my book, right?
A simple guide.
A simple guide. And it's not really a very difficult thing to read this constitution. So understand what the constitution is and how it is structured. And then in this constitution, it is spelled out what is the role of the president or the presidency. What is the role of the cabinet? What is the role of the parliament? What are the roles of the parliamentarians and provincial council members and so on? Now, simple case, to elect somebody, to appoint somebody to a position, we first need to know what that position entails, right? What we expect from that position. So you need to understand what is expected of that position. Once you have an understanding of that, then you have to think, okay, then who among the people who are now in the nomination process, who among the people are best qualified, capable, experienced, demonstrated a track record, you should select from whoever has come out to run office, whether it is president or MPs or whoever, right? And then you look at their ideologies. So one good way to look at ideologies is party. So a political party forms as a collective of a certain political ideology. So people with that same political ideology forms one party. Unfortunately, sometimes it is very difficult to understand the political ideologies of certain parties because they don't talk about it, right? And it's all merged now. But at least you have some understanding, left-leaning or right-leaning. What is the economic principle like? Is it more privatization driven? Is it more globalization driven? Or is it more local entrepreneur driven? Is the foreign policy more non-aligned and so on? So you think about all of that and you think, okay, this is what I like. This is the type of policies that I like. And this particular person represents those policies. And this particular person has the best qualifications out of the others. This person has a proven track record as against the others. Therefore, I assume that this person will do a good job, right? You can't be for sure. You can't be certain that the person, once you go there, they will do a great job. Just like how when I've recruited so many people in my life. When you recruit somebody, you can't be 100% sure that that person is going to perform, right?
But the lack of a national vision, a goal for the entire nation to move forward, this is also a reason why most of our people don't know whom to vote for, what they need to achieve.
Yeah.
So why are we not having strategies, a vision for the nation, regardless of what government comes into power? And also when you said we need to elect people to serve us, to represent the people, isn't our political system really not allowing people to elect their representatives the way they
the
wish
parties
to? Yes.
True.
So I think I have two questions here for you.
So the last one, how the parties operate and they don't give the opportunity for capable and experienced and qualified people.
And also the system itself, the electoral systems itself. For example, when we take the general elections, electing your representative from the constituency.
Yeah. Well, I think I think you're referring to the preferential voting system as against the sort of the district level, and I don't see a big issue there. As long as people understand, people don't vote based on quick gains and quick promises and quick fixes. As long as people don't do that, as long as people spend a little bit of time analyzing and understanding what is the need, what is the requirement, what is the job, and then who the people are, and then comparing them based on their qualifications. If they put a little bit of effort, I think how we cast, the current voting mechanism is not an issue, right? But that's a separate debate that we can have. But your first question. Remind me your first question. We're
talking about a national policy, vision, strategies.
Again, you use the word national. I don't like the word national because I think it should be state policy, right? Because when you say national, people are, what national? Is it Sinhala national? Is it Tamil national? Is it Sri Lankan national? What national? So I say it's state policy, right? I think it's a myth that Sri Lanka does not have a state policy, right? The constitution has state policies.
But our visions change,
vision is different.
and policies change from government to government. There is no continuation of anything that a particular government starts or initiates, and then there's a whole set of new work that comes about with the change of government. And this is not just restricted to a certain political party, but governments after governments.
I think what we're talking about here is project plans or programs or strategies rather, right? Because the word policies can change, and I think policies should change. Like for example, we can't have the same policy on land, on economy forever, right? The global context change, new demands come, climate change is happening. Things can change. There could be a recession.
But at least in the short to mid-term, we need to have policies that reflect a path that the country wants to tread.
Sure, I agree. I think what we're talking about here is, first of all, whoever comes as the president, for example. The president is the head of state, right? the president, apart from just running the duties spelled out in the constitution, the president also represents all the people and gives leadership to the people, right, and to the state. So the president needs to set a vision. You're correct, and I agree. So we need a visionary leader to be the president. And then the people also need to understand that vision and then live that vision. So it's not the role of the president and the parliamentarians and the ministers to deliver that. The people will have to do that because we are a republic, right? Republic, people make decisions through democracy. So vision, yes. But policies, I think it's okay for policies to change from time to time. But I think what you're trying to get at is that, let's say, for example, if somebody comes up with an educational program, for example, like let's say giving tablet computers to all students, right? And then they try to do that for some time, and then the government changes, and then the new government completely shuts it down or changes that or does something else. These are the things.
And even the if you look at the broader, in a broader sense, the education system itself, the way we go. I mean, this is something we've been talking about, changing the direction of the system, how policies are directed in such a way, but of course we've seen these tablets and little gifts and presents being given away or a little meal, but that's really not what I'm talking about. Why don't we have a bigger policy direction for sectors, for industries, for the economy itself?
Yeah, see, the Constitution under Chapter 6, Directive Principles of State Policy, and Fundamental Duties, states at number 13, the state shall promote with special care of interests of children and youth so as to ensure their full development, physical, mental, moral, religious and social, and to protect them from exploitation and discrimination, right? The state shall protect, preserve and improve environment for the benefit of the community. So if you read the directive principles, a lot of those directive principles that we need to have for policy is there, right? So when you have a directive principles, this is what I'm trying to say. In a company, you have something called the mission. So like Derana has a mission, right? And you change your action plans and strategies within that mission, right? So similarly, every government needs to follow these directive principles. As long as you're within these directive principles, you can come up with new and better ways of delivering the state policy. That's what I'm trying to get at. But having said that, your point about changing our education system, I completely agree, Indeewari. I fully agree, because I think our education system is archaic, right? There needs to be a radical transformation in our curriculum and how we teach, how we deliver content. Particularly because of the fourth industrial revolution, right? Through automation, a lot of jobs are going to be replaced, and a new advanced set of jobs are already coming up. So a lot of jobs that people are now being trained to do are already obsolete, right? So yes, we need to change how we educate people, the skills that we give, the knowledge that we give, and the capabilities that we impart to them through our education system. So no question, we need to change that. So I think we can do that if we elect educated, qualified. When I say educated, it's not necessarily having a degree or a PhD or whatever, right? People who are informed, right, to Parliament, who will then pass a law to solve this, right, education requirement, and then good executives as ministers or Minister of Education or Minister of Higher Education and so on, good executives to implement, to carry out, to execute those laws. That's what we need, right? And this can be done. But I think it comes back to people. People need to understand that to do that, you need to first of all get a good set of people who understands the need and who can deliver it. And
when you say the Constitution rightly lays out the kind of direction that any government needs to look at, and but again, you say the people, it's up to the people. So I believe you will take this word across the country, continue to take the word across the country.
So what I'm doing, that's why I wrote the book.
Creating awareness among the people. Thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park. That's all we have here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Indeewari.
We had with us Eranda Ginige, social entrepreneur, as well as the author of the book Jana Raja, which lays out a simple guide to the Constitution of the Republic of Sri Lanka. Thank you for joining us at Hyde Park.